Anyway, welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here today with Preston Dixon. How you doing, Press?
Doing really good, brother. Doing good.
Good to have you on. Good to have you on. Press is I don't even know what your official title is. Everything other than what Tyson does.
Yeah, I wear quite a few hats,
Yeah,
uh, uh, t- you know, Ty's really, really good at a lot of things. A lot. He oversees the billing side, he oversees the clinical side, and what I've always been able to really help him with is the marketing side and
yeah,
just different administrative piece, kind of overseeing some of the compliance stuff and the technology and the operations. And as things have progressed over the years with, the tech company here, it's more so marketing and high level operation stuff. Luckily, Richard there is just he's really the guy who's overseeing a lot of the operational things now.
yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
So you have multiple titles. That's kind of what it's like being part of a treatment organization.
Yeah,
You better get ready to do a lot of different things, which I think makes it fun. But
it does.
anyway, we're here to talk about your story. So thanks for being willing to share with the brothers out there and whoever's listening to this or whoever sees this on the site or on YouTube or wherever. Welcome everybody in. And let's just start at the beginning. What age were you? How old were you the first time you put any mind altering substance in your body?
I think I was 15 at
Yeah.
Alta High School. I had some friends that seemed to have a lot of fun taking. They called them Red Devils. They were Coricidin and cough and cold, you know, pills and like you got to try this. And I didn't really know what it was. And like it's just cough medicine. You just take a couple extra of them and it makes you feel so good, yada yada yada. And so that was kind of my first experience in the
What did it feel like? What you remember what it did to you? What it did for you? Maybe is
it
a
was
better way
kind
to
of
put it.
like it was, kind of made me feel, I didn't know what drunk was at the time. It kind of made me feel kind of inebriated, it's kind of drunk or, loosened up a little bit. I kind of liked it. I kind of liked it.
Mhm.
I remember taking a lot the next day after I did the first time and got really sick. And I was like, this is stupid. But, it was kind of my first experience in, just feeling altered,
Mhm.
I remember it was kind of fun. I kind of like the idea of it being kind of sneaky, as
Yeah,
like I supposed to be doing it.
yeah.
And that, there was a lot of, looking back as I got into, drugs and alcohol and these different things. Um, that was a big piece of it I shouldn't be doing it. It's kind of
Mhm.
opposition defiant type of thing. And yeah, at that point, I was going through a lot as a a teenager. You're trying to figure out who you are.
Yeah,
Uh,
not much going on with a 15-year-old boy. I've got twins that are 15, dude. It's hormone city. It's freaking
yeah.
oppositional defiant. It's what all the above, man. It's
Yeah.
it's a hard time to
Yeah.
be a human being, like we're trying to figure out who we are with girls and yeah. So
Yeah.
using can really tame some of those anxieties, some of those feelings of inadequacies, whatever. Was that what it was doing for you? Was it medicating something?
Yeah, it was for sure. And at that time in my life, I always just wanted to be good enough. Right. And I didn't quite identify that as an emotion as far as like feeling insecure or not feeling good enough. But that's for sure. Because quickly after that, I started drinking. I remember my friend saying, "Hey, let's drink some Bacardi Silvers. It's not really beer. It's kind of like it's a Bacardi, And so I
Mhm.
started drinking a little bit, and at the same time, I had a serious girlfriend, and things progressed there. And growing up LDS, in that type of environment, started experiencing really heavy shame for the first time, right? Doing things with girls and just feeling that, oh my gosh. But then when I drank or did these things or did those things, the whole idea of, hey, if you ever drink or these things, you're going to end up in the van by the river. And, I
Mhm.
remember thinking, everyone lied to me. This is great. Like, why doesn't
Mhm.
everybody? I remember thinking, I should tell my dad, like, everyone, like, this is fantastic. You feel so good. And, I went through
It's
down
the
that.
solution. It's the
Yeah,
answer.
I found a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that shame, that's part of that addiction cycle is we feel those things, we use the using create shame, and to get rid of the shame we use, and it just kind of keeps
A
cycling
vicious
back and
cycle.
forth and back and forth. Um, and obviously you grew up in Utah. I grew up in northern Minnesota, high Catholic. Now drinking in that was way more acceptable, but
Right.
people say that Catholics invented perfectionism and shame, and LDS people perfected it. So I've been part of two highly shaming, or at least I think the shame comes from us.
Right.
I don't know that. Anyway, well, so how does that progress through high school? What happens?
Yeah. And I remember feeling a lot of pressure to go on a mission, right? And I didn't really know if I really wanted to go. And I had a pretty serious girlfriend at the time, but the addiction slowly got worse and more frequent. And really like the pills. I love the lower tab. I remember getting my wisdom teeth out and had a small prescription there that I ate in about 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that progressed to Oxycontin. And me and Tyson, he kind of got me into smoking weed there earlier on, and I got him into oxys, and he got me into heroin, and heroin took us down fast. I mean, I was 20, so between 15 to 20 was the drinking, smoking weed thing, the a lot of cognitive dissonance. I knew I shouldn't be doing it, but it was the solution, and I always had in my mind in the future I'll quit, when I get married or have kids, or all those type of justifications and rationalizations, and slowly and surely, it got to that point where I had developed that God-shaped hole where I was just filling it with porn and drug, everything to just try to feel good enough, or to feel okay, or just sometimes just to get through the day, or just to satiate those urges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of fear. I was in a ton of fear, and that was kind of my rock bottom. I was just so sick and tired of being scared all the time, because I got a
Yeah.
brother too. I remember Dustin, one of our buddies, overdosed and passed away, and that's when things got really real. And then here another girl that I knew that had passed away, and things just got to the point where I was just really scared, not so much for my life, but for like Ty's, like my brother's, he's always, Ty, we've always been best friends. It's like, dude, so I finally had a moment of clarity. It's like, dude, if we keep going down this path, one or both of us is toast, I mean,
Yeah.
so 20 years old and smoking heroin and cocaine and just running and gunning and just living moment to moment. I mean, I wasn't even thinking to pass the weekend at that point. It's like, what do I got to do to get well today? And just the people who are around, it's just so dark. Looking
Mm-hmm.
back, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a bad dream almost. And
Mm-hmm.
through a moment of clarity, I was just like, I'm, for once in my life, I'm going to get honest with my parents, and told my mom. And never forget it, man. She was like visibly shaking, and it was riveting. It was riveting, and just spilled the beans. And
Now, you're not the oldest in your family?
no, I am. Yeah.
You are the oldest. Okay.
Oldest of five. Yeah. It's
So
me, Tom.
the oldest comes up and tells mom.
Yeah. And she was kind of relieved
Yeah.
at the time because they knew something was wrong. I mean, Ty, uh, he went from, I mean, he's played football, pretty big stature, and he was just down to skin and bones, and as was I. But Ty was a lot more visible because he was a little bit bigger than I was back then. He had just lost a ton of weight, and he was always a little bit crazier than I was. He'd always use a
Mm-hmm.
little more and just be more aggressive to get it. I wasn't much worse off behind him. But after telling mom, I remember seeing her feel, kind of relieved, like she knew, like, okay, now I know what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working with dad at the time, doing like door-to-door sales, setting appointments for financial planners, just that type of thing. And I mean, we couldn't even get out to work, or we'd fall asleep in the car after doing heroin for 6 hours. You know, like our lives were falling apart. And so she knew it. She's our mom, and we're living in uh, the
So were you
basement.
living with them?
Um, I'm not sure. At one point, we moved out. We were in when we were in a basement apartment at some point. I can't remember. Dude, a lot of that kind of time, just hard to remember, as you can
Mhm.
imagine, kind of exactly what happened. Um, but yeah, within 24 hours, we ended up in detox at Lakeview Hospital.
Mhm.
And I still remember the day in the back of the Suburban on the way there, just feeling so much anxiety, just so
Mhm.
much fear, because I knew I needed to change, but I didn't want to change.
Mhm.
I was just so scared. It's like
So you're what, 20, 21?
20 years old. Yeah. Yeah, I was
Okay.
20 years old and Ty was 18, 18, maybe 19. We're 18 months apart. So, this was March. So yeah, he was 19 because I turned 21 in treatment.
Okay.
I went to the Arc, a little Cottonwood. They're no longer around. They're
Yeah.
based in Cotton Canyon. But yeah, I went to detox and of course lied to him and told him we were using a lot more than we were in hopes to get more detox meds. Looking back, I was a sick puppy. I was a sick puppy, brother. But went through the detox thing, and my dad sat down with me and said, "Hey, and he's my dad. He can be pretty brilliant at times." He
Mhm.
says, "Hey, look, bro, look, son, your brother is not going to go to treatment unless you go to treatment. So you need to be a good example," type of thing, and had that talk. And so I went to treatment. At that point, I didn't really think I really had the disease. I thought, this is thing I just got to just stop and move
Mhm.
forward on. And yeah, I learned really quick in treatment that wasn't the case. I definitely needed more help than I originally thought I did. You know,
How long were you in res?
so I was in there for 90 days.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, 90 days, and almost left 2 weeks in. Um, had a really cool, probably the most spiritual experience of my life up to this point was 2 weeks into treatment. And after going through the first 2 weeks, coming off opiates, you're not really sleeping and feel like I was going crazy, and the anxiety and the fear and starting
Were
to
you
feel.
taking Suboxone at the time, or what were you
Oh, I
doing?
wasn't. I didn't want anything. I didn't know if it was
Okay.
like ego at the time or what. Or I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do anything. I don't. I didn't really trust the doctors. I'd heard some things that they'll give you weird stuff. So I didn't really want anything. I've never taken meds in my life other than drugs and alcohol, and I was just, there's part of me that just was done, but I was just in a lot of fear, and I did. And 2 weeks into it, I'm feeling all these emotions again, right? And I talked to guys at the ranch, and I've done tons of groups, and I've talked about this, but because
Mhm.
this was a really real thing for me, is I was at that breaking point. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
either I'm going to get through this next phase of my recovery and pick up some tools and figure out how to live sober, or I'm going to leave and do
On a
what I
balance.
is
Yeah.
going to work, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
2 weeks in treatment, um,
Because as weird as it sounds to people, probably not people listening to this, that the drugs were still a solution in your mind.
oh
They
yeah,
still you hearken back to when they worked and the
yeah.
relief you got. And even if it was for 5 or 10 minutes, you would trade 5 or 10 minutes for, other than going through what you had to go through. I had a guy the other day. I did um, a podcast with Mark Pepper,
Nice. Love that.
and yeah, and he said, my first wife gave me the choice of either her or the cocaine, and he said, well, I'm not addicted to you. And that was the end of that marriage, right?
Oh man.
I know sometimes they seem like, and they probably are irrational decisions, but at the time they're fully rational. They feel like we're
Yeah.
making complete sense to ourselves, right?
Well, right. And from a biological standpoint, neurochemical standpoint, I wasn't thinking clearly, right? My
Yeah.
brain had been so used to running the show that my prefrontal cortex wasn't. I mean, it's what was happening at the time is my prefrontal cortex. I didn't know this at the time, but it was starting to feel all these emotions that
Yeah.
it couldn't process. All the fear, all the anxiety, all of the shame, all of the I remember just bawling thinking, oh my gosh, the last few years I haven't even like made an attempt to hang out with my grandpa.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, just feeling like just depressed, man. Just sad. I remember like counting. It was almost like this, dude. In treatment in the group room, we had all the squares. I remember sitting there counting the squares to just get my mind off of
Yeah.
all the stuff I was just, in hell thinking about constantly.
And I think the brain stuff you're talking about is critical because for you guys out there, when we're in our midbrain, we're in fight or flight survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
And we live most of our lives using in the midbrain. We don't get to the front where we can reason and say, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that." So when you stop using and you're still living in the fear in the midbrain and you're not doing anything with it, you're scared, right?
Yeah.
There, you get anxiety, you get some things because you're always in this state of
And
high.
that's right. And that was like my emotional home at the time too. Is like I was used to living in that state.
Yeah,
Right. And so to try to kind of change, that was scary. And I think our bodies get used to that emotional state. Tony Robbins talks about all the time where people living in middle of America, these big storms that come through and take everything out. They rebuild every 5 years. And it's like, why do these people move? It's because that's their emotional home. And, as human beings, we have, an emotional home. We get used to how we're feeling. And so when things change, we just, anyway,
yeah,
you get it. But that's where I was. And I was scared. I remember talking to Tracy, my therapist, and this was another piece of it was the belief. I didn't believe that I could live the rest of my life sober,
yeah,
you know. I couldn't imagine myself going on a cruise and not drinking. I couldn't imagine myself just living a life just completely sober. It was really hard for me to imagine that.
yeah.
And so I told him that I was going to leave. I remember sitting in his office and saying, Tracy, I want to leave. I was done at this point. And I remember him sitting there and talking with me. And um, he had the kindest eyes, man. He was just almost like this theater, just looking at me and just like, hey, man, I love you, dude, and I will support you in this. And I can't remember exactly what we talked about, but he just helped me kind of talk through some things and just kind of helped me encourage me, say, hey, look, man, can you just maybe give it one more day? I think you're almost there. You're going through a lot. And then he said something that I'll never forget. Um, he said, "Hey, Press, why are you trying to do this whole thing on your own?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, what do you mean?" He's like, "You're trying to like do this whole thing on your own, trying to get through this on your own. Don't you know that there's a guy upstairs that can help you out?" And for a second, I'm thinking like, "Who is this guy upstairs?" And realize I'm on the second floor of like the barn. He's talking about God, and he's like, he's like, maybe asking for help. And I grew up with the testimony. I always kind of knew there was a God there. I had faith. And so I committed to him that I would throw a Hail Mary and I'd talk to God and see if he could help me. And that night, I did, man. I prepared myself as spiritually as I could. I remember reading some of the Book of Mormon, the Bible, the Four Agreements. I finished the Four Agreements that night and just kind of sat there to try to just kind of prepare myself to talk to God because it had been a while, right? And and I did, man. I threw a prayer up there, and before I could even really say anything, I just felt like I felt that warm blanket that you get when the spirit is in the room essentially. And I just remember crying, man. I just cried and just kind of felt like like it was an overwhelming like sense of love and peace and serenity. And for the first time in a long time, I felt good enough. I felt okay. I felt peace, right? Which was so foreign to me. Like I
Mhm.
hadn't felt peace in a long time. And um that was it, man. That was it. That was like the turning point where it was like, okay, like I need to figure out how I can have that peace in my life.
Yeah,
And that's when I started asking the right questions. Like, like what do I need to do to feel okay? What do I
yeah,
need to do? Like, how do I get honest? How can I work through some of this stuff? And that's when I realized it was a feelings disease, an
yeah.
emotional, and it anyway. So that was
Sounds like you got high on God there.
I did, man, for
You know?
sure.
And isn't that funny how sparky counterfeits the feeling of God
Oh
with
yeah.
drugs and alcohol. That feeling of peace we get
Yeah.
when we get, when the drugs kick in, when the booze kicks in.
Yeah.
There's that feeling like you had, but it's counterfeit, and then it goes
Yeah.
away, and then you don't get hung over from this experience you had with God.
Right.
You get thirstier and hungrier, and but
Yeah.
it's funny how the adversary uses similar things to fool us.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
exactly what he does. He's been doing it a long time. He's really good at it, man.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So that progresses you through residential?
Yep. Yeah, I went through residential, and I got out. They had an aftercare program that it I don't remember much about. I think it was a once a week show up for a group type of thing. So I did that for a while, and then I got got 9 months and started slowly and surely taking my will back, and started drinking again because drinking wasn't my problem. I
Right.
thought it was the heroin, and you know, I just
Funny,
my
dude. I interrupt you quick. I've done a bunch of assessments in my life, and I've got a little nonprofit that I work with some people getting out of residential,
yeah,
and I ask them what was the first time you started using. They'll maybe they're 33 and they go, when I was 27. I'm like, wait, you didn't use anything until, well, no, that's when I started slamming heroin, or that's when I started smoking meth, and that it's
right,
always that was my drug of choice, but that other stuff's okay.
yeah,
And that happens to a lot of people. Hey man, especially with opioid, I found.
right.
Hey, at least I'm not slamming heroin or smoking heroin.
That
You know,
justification and
yeah.
rationalization. Yeah,
You go to that first concert and you go, oh, there's a beer, and I can always kind of drink. Well,
right.
I can tell you, a bunch of years ago, I thought weed was my nemesis, and it was killing me, and I stopped smoking weed, and my drinking doubled. Like you make up for it, right, with not doing it. So
Yeah.
you go through that mind of, yeah, it'll be okay. I didn't have a problem with beer.
Well, yeah. I mean, really, the real problem was I stopped doing the small and simple things. Right. I stopped praying very much. Right. I stopped reaching out. I stopped serving. Right. I stopped um, because, as we know, the real problem is not the drug and alcohol. Although it's a problem, the real problem is, not taking care of myself and putting other things before God, and the ego and all those other things kind of start creeping in, and started drinking to cope with the insecurities again, or cope with feelings of I'm not measuring up to the person I should be, and
Yeah.
the lack of gratitude and the greed. I need more and more and more. So went through that cycle for till August of 2010, where it got so bad where my girlfriend at the time, my wife, Alicia, she was my girlfriend at the time, set a boundary. She said, Press, like she's like, she knew I wasn't happy. It got to the point where the drinking went from once a month to once a week to every other day to just about every day to I started using uh I was living in Vegas selling home security, and I started buying Lortab from one of the sales guys, and the mixture of those, I ended up falling asleep in soup at Mimi's Cafe there in Vegas. And Alicia's sister Maddie was out there, and I tried to say, "Oh, I'm so tired." Like, dude, I
I'm
was like,
working hard. Yeah.
dude, it's like popping up soup, like falling asleep in it. And Maddie's told her like something's wrong with him, and so I got honest with her, and she set a boundary, and she actually moved back to Salt Lake. And she says, "Hey, you need to you make some changes if we're going to continue our relationship, essentially." And so I ended up doing 90 meetings in 90 days and getting a sponsor, and um finding myself again, right? Starting to recognize the guy, looking back in the mirror again, and like, oh yeah, this is why, it's so important for me to
Right.
to stay not only involved in recovery, but be active in recovery, and
How long were you out for?
um from from 2006 till 2010.
So 4 years of drinking, and then
Yep. Yep.
long
And the
time.
drinking progressed to the pills, and then within 3, 4 months, I got bad again. I was drinking every day and doing
Yeah.
pills, and just
So you're
starting to.
sober 9 months. You remember the first drink you took when you were, and what was going through your mind?
Yeah.
Remember how you fooled yourself into that one?
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about it many times. And it was why can a lot of my friends drink and not do drugs and have happy lives, right? And that's the biggest thing I had to come to terms with is that because I thought I was unique, right? That defense mechanism of terminal uniqueness, that was me to a T. Is I'm different than everybody, right? Like
Mhm.
I can do these things and
It's
still.
the yeah buts.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And it always kind of paired with other behaviors too, like video games. I'd play video games and with a buddy, and hey, let's have a beer, and that's really when it started. Is hey, I just want to relax. I think I'd had like a bad week or was in a fight with my girl, whatever it was, but somehow it was easy to rationalize. And the
Mhm.
relapse happened a lot before that mentally. I think is just taking my will back, doing the things that I want to do, and yeah, it's interesting looking at it, because it's kind of like the whole analogy. If you put a toad in a pot in warm water and it slowly gets turned up, they get cooked without even knowing it, and it
Mhm.
started not going to meetings anymore. It started not showing up in church or not uh doing anything that's eating unhealthy,
Yeah.
like just starting to eat like shit all the time and thinking I'm going to feel good. It's all those things, man. It's
Relapses happen typically months before we actually pick up.
for sure.
And in fact, I've been doing a lot of these podcasts over the last year with ranch guys from many years ago, and almost to the guy, they'll say, "I still make my bed every morning." And one dude that had a relapse said, I knew I was relapsing in a relapse mode when my bed wasn't made for a week. So there's
Yep.
these little self-care things and
Yep.
recovery things that start. Yeah, I got it. I don't, we're not as vigilant, right? We kind of, and part of that I think for me was, and for a lot of guys I work with, like God sort of fades away. I got it now, and I'm not in the war. I'm not in the foxhole anymore.
Right.
And if we could keep that level of vulnerability and that level of what's the word I'm thinking of? Just desperation that we
Right.
had in early recovery. That desperation for God throughout
Right.
our lives. But it's human nature to kind of go, I got it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And I was just talking to a brother this morning actually who's going through some things, and he was saying it would be nice to just kind of have, like constant reminders throughout the day of, just to take my meds is what he'd said. And
Mhm.
it's interesting is that's the human nature piece. A lot of times we don't start making changes until we feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that the Lord loves us enough that He helps us feel that way sometimes when we're we'll be. I know with me at least, I've been compelled quite often.
Pain is usually the motivator for change. No, we don't like pain.
No, we don't.
So, and typically when the pain of using outweighs the pain of not using, we quit. And when the pain of not using, in recovery, if we're in pain a lot and we're not working recovery, when the
Yeah,
pain of not using outweighs the pain of using, we relapse because we want to get rid of pain.
right. That's
And
generational, right? That's kind of been instilled in us. I think almost genetically, not only environmentally, but I love how when you came out to the ranch a few months ago, and you talked about generational disease and how we're the ones that we can turn it all around for our
yeah,
family. For guys who are starting to experience that change of heart. I remember, kind of hearing that in early on recovery and thinking, man, how cool is that? That if we can turn it around, if we can get healthy, however that
Mhm.
looks, right? Create new habits, new behaviors that turn into personality traits, that turn into, who we are,
Yeah.
that help, you know, that can help our kids and their kids. And looking at from that perspective, for me, and for me at least, it's been really, really cool because now that I have
Yeah.
kids, I love more than anything in this world, that it's like, it's really cool to see that and be able to understand that. And I don't think that gets talked about enough with
Yeah. Well, I
guys.
think what I've always asked guys in groups over the years is how many of you raise your hand if you think you're the black sheep of the family. And usually
Right,
8 out of 10 guys will raise their hand. And the reality is, and kind of where you were going with that, I think, or what I said was, you know, if early recovery feels heavy, it's heavy because you're not the black sheep, you're the savior of your family, and you're taking on generations of abuse and trauma and addiction from generations before you
yeah,
and generations pushing forward. And so if it feels heavy, and some of you out there listening, if it feels heavy, it is because you're actually part of saving your family forward and backward.
yeah,
And that's why it feels heavy. You're just not doing it, you're just not feeling your stuff,
right,
and how many of those men, when they walk away and they get sober, and then all of a sudden their brothers are getting sober, and then of course their kids aren't seeing drunk high dad, and then parents or spouses come into family and come into recovery through Al-Anon. And I mean, how many of those, the ripple effect of
right,
one guy going into treatment? And sometimes men don't see that. They just see themselves as the dude that caused all the problem in the family,
right.
you
And it's
know?
so hard to see yourself as like that. For me, it was always really difficult for me, H, to see myself as that guy, right? You
Yeah.
know, and
Well, you're in a high achiever family too.
yeah,
You and I grew up kind of similar. I think in your family, maybe it was more verbal, like, hey, let's go do this. In my family, it was sort of just undertow. My dad's side of the family were doctors. My mom's side were lawyers. It's like,
yeah,
which one are you going to be? It
right,
was never verbal. Like, it wasn't like, hey, when are you going to go? But
right,
there was this undertow of perfectionism and achieve and high achieve. And
yeah,
not that there's anything wrong with that,
yeah,
but when that's part of the system,
yeah,
and you don't feel like you can achieve that,
yeah.
um, it's a bad spot for kids.
Oh, for sure. And you have that measuring stick and you see
Yeah,
where you should be, and
yeah,
this is measuring up, and the difference between here and here,
yeah,
it was killing me. As I never felt good enough. I never felt like I was doing enough. And throughout my recovery, the last 13 years, I've had a lot of relapses on nicotine, and
mhm,
I've never been able to put caffeine down. I'm it's been the thing that's really, I think, worked for me in a lot of ways, is realizing that I'm not perfect, and that's okay, and life is hard.
yeah,
um, and the tools that I pick up is when I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, or I'm feeling like I'm not measuring up, is I need to talk to somebody.
yeah,
Because for years I wouldn't say anything. I would just use, and I'd feel good enough. And it was that counterfeit, like you're talking about, where all of a sudden I was okay for a few hours, and then it got worse. And then that measuring stick came lower, and then there's that bigger gap I got to fill.
yeah.
And
Well, and we compare ourselves to somebody, and it's part of experiencing life. Like if I'm going to model or have someone as an example, I've got to compare myself. I've got to look at, but
right,
typically when we do it, we're either better than them or we're less than them, and neither of those is correct.
yeah,
And I think I found people in addiction, that's a huge part of that feeling less than, is I'm never going to be able to get there, and I'm never, and then and it's usually we're beating ourselves down. Some people maybe are more narcissistic and are like, but even the guy that's out there touting I'm the greatest ever, he's just a scared little kid.
right,
He's just a scared little kid.
yeah,
And it's not ego, it's fear,
yeah.
in my opinion. So you're like, did you have another moment of clarity there when, I mean, your then girlfriend says, I'm out of here, dude. And you stay in Vegas and get sober in Vegas?
No,
Okay.
I started to,
Yeah.
and I moved back, and that's when I really,
I
uh,
don't usually add geography to,
yeah,
you can say sober or not, but when you're talking about
it's
Vegas,
hard to get sober in Vegas.
yeah, yeah, there's so many other things you can counter addict to that. Yeah. So you came back to Utah.
Yeah, I started hitting meetings in Vegas, and at the same time, jobs kind of switched up, and moved back to Utah. I had a good friend, Jason, who helped me kind of set up like a sub dealer type program for selling home security. So I did that. Got really involved in the ARP program.
Okay.
Started ARP very frequently, became a facilitator in the ARP program. I did that for a few years, and
So those of you who don't know, the ARP is the addiction recovery program that the LDS Church has adopted over the last 25 years, 20, 25 years.
yeah, it's modeled up after AA.
Yep.
It's yeah. So I got really really heavy involved in that, and started going back to church. I moved into a cool ward. That was tough to kind of get back into church. It really was, and because you get the questions, where'd you go on your mission, all those things, and I, and I still care a lot about what people think, but that's one of the things I've had to like really work on is not care so much about what people think, because that was a big barrier for me to go back to church. Is what is people going to think of me? And it was
Yeah.
really cool as I started to get vulnerable, right? Which for me, when I'm in a good place, I'm more vulnerable, which is hard to do. And my spirituality, my recovery, just like everybody's, it ebbs and flows. But
Yeah.
usually when I'm happiest is when I'm myself and I'm vulnerable and I'm not perfect, and that's okay, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. And I remember talking in elders quorum, sharing my story at one point, and then the bishop, wanted me to start speaking um, fifth Sundays, and I started doing that, and it was a really really cool experience, a really good growth experience. That first few years moving back, getting involved in the church again, and started doing the temple prep classes. Then me and Alicia got married civilly, and then we got married a year later in the temple, and did that.
Don't you find, I mean, as you look back, that we judge ourselves a lot more than other people judge us?
We beat the shit out of
Yeah.
ourselves.
Like I don't want to go back there, wherever, whether it's church or a work situation, or and what are they
Or
going to think of me?
eating,
And most people are just happy you're back.
right?
And yet our minds are going, oh, they're judging me. Why didn't, and when you're a male, I didn't grow up in Utah and I didn't grow up LDS, but when you're a male in Utah, the where did you serve your mission thing
You're right.
is a pretty common question, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like I didn't go on
Um,
a mission. I went to rehab. Like
yeah,
that was the
yeah,
truth,
yeah.
and coming to terms with that
I
was
went
awesome.
to an RTC, not an MTC.
I haven't heard that one. It's a little bit different. A lot
That's
of
pretty good.
service
That just came to me. That
opportunities.
was a pretty damn good line. It was served in the RTC, the residential treatment. Oh man. So you start just progressing, and then so how long before, when you moved back, before your then girlfriend and you reunited? Did she give it some time, or what? How did that work?
Um, Not much time. I mean, I think she could see that I really wanted it, because I had expressed to her that I wasn't happy, and I wanted to. I remember saying several times to her, I wanted to get back to where, I feel like I'm living right, and I'm doing things for the right reasons, and I wanted God back in my life, right? And it was one of those things that she knew I wanted, and so when I moved back, um, she could see that pretty quick, I think. Um, so it wasn't too much of it wasn't one of those things like, hey, I'm leaving you for a while. Like we've always been really close. I've always been able to tell her things, and luckily, get honest with her, and sometimes not right away, but coming around to it. And yeah. So yeah, we did that whole um it was hard for her too to kind of get back into church. Her parents started drinking, kind of fell away from the church for a while, and so it's kind of hard for her to kind of get back. So it's kind of one of those things that we kind of did together, which I think brought us pretty close, kind of going
Right.
through that and finding our own tone with it too. I didn't want to be, Peter Priest type of, I just had a whole different mentality, with the church, and it's, I love the gospel, but there's a lot of the things with the church I haven't really jived with a lot, but it's one of those things that there's so much value in it that and so many good people that are trying to do the right thing. And my whole perception growing up is that you have to be perfect to go to church, right? That was my whole persona, is like, and that was how it was culturally. I think it still is to a big degree, is people feel like they got to be perfect or have this persona of perfectionism, and we don't talk
Yeah.
about things, and there's all this taboo stuff. And so I found, a lot of really cool fulfillment in kind of addressing some of that stuff with people and kind of
Church
getting
is,
real,
church isn't a house for saints, it's a haven for sinners.
for sure.
And that's, and we're all there. It doesn't matter. The president of the LDS church sins every day, and that's part of being mortal. So I think, yeah, I think that perfectionism, that stuff, and I think everybody does recovery a little bit different. Everybody does religion a little bit different, and I think, all God wants is us to keep seeking Him
Yeah.
and keep acknowledging His grace in our life and His works in our life, and then, as He always tells us, go love other people.
Yeah.
Like, it's great you've got all this internal stuff, and it's great you're sober, Preston, and HR, and it's great, all this is going great, and you're getting married now, but, like, what are you doing for other people?
Yeah.
And sobriety is one of those gifts that you lose it if you don't give it away.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about your transition into Ren'ais'sance, and
Yeah.
how that's affected, because that's a big part of your life now, and a big part of what you do, and your daily thing. And I'm sure your phone's always ringing if it was anything like when I was there. And you don't just punch out. you
Right.
know
Yeah. Yeah. And it was so cool, to get to know you in that time, when we bought the ranch, and you stayed on for a year, and I was executive director, and you kind of took me under your wing, and I'm really grateful for you for that. You could have kind of been a lot more disassociative, but you weren't. You were very involved, and you cared a lot. You gave a massive shit. You did. You gave me a big binder that thick of all those things that you put a lot of time and effort into. And I remember, all the conversations with you, and talking through, my job wasn't the clients, my job was the staff. If we can help the staff be, that the staff feel okay and empower them and help them, that would translate, like, onto the clients. And I remember the conversations with balancing the tension between admissions and clinical, and that's like one of your biggest pieces. And yeah, you taught me a lot, man. I wanted to tell you, I'm really grateful for you, seriously. Thinking early about coming onto this podcast, I just wanted you to know that, like, really grateful for what you've done, and your uh just the effort that you put in, and it was really cool. But yeah, to answer your question, going into that, it was a life-changing experience for me, because I had no training. I hadn't gone to school. I was wet behind the ear, and now I'm an executive director of a treatment center. And so I remember constantly just trying to learn, and the people there, the staff there that you'd worked with for years, were so competent, and they carried the mantle and the stewardship with pride. And it was really cool to just come into that and get to know Chris Groves and just everybody. And my job, I felt, was to support people and empower people and do anything I could to help. And that's still what it is today, is like, what can I do to help them in their role? Right. I've
yeah,
got some gifts that I think that I can use to help people, support them with different things. But that's always how it's been for me, is like, this is something that's been set up, And I know that you're the first to say this, that this is a God thing, right? This isn't HR setting this up. I know you were guided to set the ranch up, in the conversations that you and I have had, and the greatest spiritual experience that you have had, that I remember asking you on that long trip out to Idaho, was when you prayed to ask God if you should start the ranch, and that whole experience you had it. So I knew that it was something that, coming into it, that it was something I just couldn't screw up. That
Wow.
that was the piece that's, I just can't screw this thing up. Like, what can I do to make this a place for healing for men, like it was, kind of for me. Because at the end of the day, it's God that changes people's hearts,
Yeah,
and
it
if we can
is.
create a place for that to happen, then the miracle will be there.
Well, you guys, you're doing incredible stuff, dude.
Thanks.
What back to your sobriety? What do you do on a daily basis to stay sober? What are some of your dailies that you do to maintain your sobriety? Not just, I don't want to use, like, that's a small part of sobriety is
Right.
using,
Yeah.
but the peace and the happiness and the joy. Like, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, a big piece of it is just constant contact with God. Um, yeah, my kids, just taking the time to be in the moment, I think, is the biggest, hardest piece for me sometimes, is, or what gives me anxiety, or what can kind of put me or derail me, is when I'm thinking too much in the future, or I'm thinking too much in the past. And so staying present for me has always been, when I'm in a good place, is I'm doing those things, the dailies, to stay present. I'm talking to God, I'm talking to other alcoholics,
Yeah,
other addicts. Another piece of it that's been huge for me is taking care of my body, going to the gym,
yeah,
and just doing other different things. Because the gym, I get bored of it after a while, right? And so it would switch to gaming, or it'd switch to other things, to just get my mind off of work, or those type of things. I actually ended up selling my Xbox about 6 months ago. It was the best
really
day of my wife's life.
good for you.
Like any addict, I'm like, it's like whack-a-mole, like, I'll
Yeah,
get at the gym,
yeah.
I'll get working out too much, or I get too over obsessed with work, and that's all I
Dude,
think.
I'm so old. I grew up with Atari Pong. That's how, and that was so damn boring. You did it about for a day, and you're like, this is just the most boring thing I've ever done in my life. So I
Yeah.
never, that was one addiction I never picked up, luckily.
Yeah, just like I remember you. I don't know if I heard it from you. I've heard you. We've heard it all over the place in the rooms, but your tools can wear out. You got to find new tools.
Yeah.
And so I'll get in these good routines, and then I'll just get bored, or they're not working as much anymore. And so, like, the latest one lately, I think I was telling you before we started the podcast, was the cold plunging.
Yeah.
Just doing something different for myself. And there's a lot of benefits I found in get sitting in a cold plunge for 35, 37 degrees for 5 minutes, and then
Yeah.
hit sauna. It's just that natural dopamine, release,
Yeah.
and just doing just different things to just keep life interesting and healthy. And I try to eat healthy, and that ebbs and flows just like everything else. But
Well, addiction is a holistic problem, and the solution is holistic as well. So a lot of things affect brain chemistry, from what we put in our bodies to how much we work out, how little we work out, how we're doing emotionally, how we're doing spiritually, and it, you
yeah,
can't, I'm finding, and I'm not good at it, but when I find balance in my life, when I'm doing a little bit of everything every day,
yeah,
and just trying my best, I have better days. So, well, dude, thanks for coming on, man. I can tell you, when I first met Press, it was, I guess, 2014 or something like
yeah,
that, and we're a lot alike, believe it or not. And even
yeah,
the way your relationship, my brother Steve, like Ty, was just a little more crazier than I was willing to push the envelope a little further
yeah,
than I was, and I just sort of sat back and watched and kind of did. So we've had really similar upbringings, but the thing I love about this guy is he's got a massive heart, and it's very evident in what he does, and excuse me, how he lives his life. And so I've told this, I think, to your dad and your mom, and I'm sure to Ty, maybe not to Ty, but you know, I'm one of my few skills is I like making things or creating things. I'm not a good maintainer, and there is no way that that I could have taken the ranch to the levels you guys have, not just with St. George and the campuses in Idaho and the out, but all the great work your mom and dad are doing in the family program and the kids that are leading younger people's groups. And, it just, your mom getting her master's degree. And I mean, just the Dixon family is exactly, I believe, what needed to happen to Renaissance Ranch. And I'm grateful to all of you for for doing that and for continuing to do that, because I know it's not easy, and there's just no way it could have expanded and turned into multiplied like it has without all of you guys' efforts. So thanks for that. All you guys out there that are looking for alumni groups, there's so many resources now online that the ranch provides that we never did before. There's so many groups and meetings and family and for kids,
Yeah.
and I mean it's just unbelievable. So if you get on their website, call Press Up if you need help, if your family needs help, if your kids are struggling with your addiction, they've got resources there to help guide your whole family because it's a family disease, and it's so cool to see your family becoming such a big part of the solution.
Thanks, H. I love you, brother. That means a lot. It means a lot. I'm grateful for you, man. And yeah, yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been a whole. I mean, there's so many more families now that are involved, as you know, like Piper's family, and just all our staff. Yeah, it's been the most humbling thing to watch, God's hand in this work, because it's
Yeah,
a work, as you know, and um, yeah, and it's really cool. And yeah, for those people listening that might not know where to go or what to do, um, yeah, go to our website. We've got a lot of resources. You can download the app. We've got all the family programs in the app. We've got a lot of things in there that can help. But for family members, there is I was on another podcast, the Comeback podcast, and I remember Ashley asking me, like, there's a lot of parents that don't know what to do. And now that I'm a parent, I see that perspective more, right?
yeah,
And that the hardest thing is you're a parent, you have a loved one or a spouse that is struggling, you just don't know what to do. And there's so much support for families. And the best advice that I've heard family members give other family members is to work your own recovery.
yeah,
'Cause hurting too. There's ways that they can find peace and find connection and get support from other people who've gone through it, and are going through it. And there's a lot of peace there. But dude, H, thanks for inviting me on the podcast. This has been
yeah.
awesome.
No worries, bud. Thanks for sharing your story, and I sure love you.
Love you too, brother.
Take care, man.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
See you, Press.